I'm Roger Jeffries, County Executive for Justice and Public Safety, and I'm Chair of the Privacy Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm calling the meeting to order. And we can start with introductions.
I'm Christy Orr, Assistant General Counsel of Board of Regents from the University of Texas System.
I'm Mike Robinson, and I represent the city of Round Rock.
I'm Ted Wilson. I'm a retired prosecutor out of Harris County, but James Wilson, the sheriff of Williamson County, asked me to be his representative, and I've been part of this for 3 years now.
That's okay.
And I'm Gregory Foster. I'm the City of Austin's representative on the PPAC community advocate position.
Y'all want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Carrie Grace, and I'm the privacy officer for ARIC.
I'm Troy Ye, Assistant Chief over the Investigations Bureau.
I'm Daryl Jamil. I'm the commander of the Intelligence Division for the Austin Police Department.
Eric Fitzgerald. I'm a sergeant, and I'm currently assigned to the Austin Regional Intelligence Center.
Okay, thank you. So we have 3 agenda items for our meeting today. Number 1 is discuss recent documents made public regarding ARIC. Agenda item number 2 is discuss privacy policy concerning ARIC data collection, retention, and dissemination. 3, discuss and possibly take action on a presentation to Austin's Public Safety Commission. Behind your, for the committee members, behind your agenda is a copy of the privacy policies for your reference. And I did make a few copies of some of the documents that you sent, but it's not a full set. So if anybody wants a copy of those documents, got those. Did you have bring copies?
I do have copies of some of the documents, and I'll pass these out. This also includes, from my perspective, some of the questions, some paths that we can go down for exploring some of these articles that were presented.
Can you direct me to the questions?
They're kind of interspersed throughout. Follows the path of the items. Now you have your walk us through these.
I will ask you to do that if you have one. Sure.
Did you get copies of these? There should be copies of these. So first of all, thank you to our colleagues who have joined us today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I think that we do have a couple of articles, and really the documents that were behind the articles, which have come to the committee's attention, and wanted to take a look at those particular documents, kind of confirm that ARIC accepted the documents into its data stores, and really just sort of walk through the process of how those documents were submitted to ARIC. And I think this gives us a couple of use cases to use some terminology from the software development world, to exercise the policy. And I think that we'll probably find that the coverage in the policy takes care of any questions that may arise. And we can sort of address the questions as they come up. In this document, the questions are really marked by a star on the far left-hand side, and interspersed you'll find the documents themselves. So I was going to suggest that to begin with, we just look at some terminology questions, because in the privacy policy, there's another governing document that's included, which is 28 CFR Part 23. And is the committee familiar with this document? 28 CFR Part 23? Okay, that's great. I'm glad. I had not actually looked at it prior to, say, about a week ago. And so, and I'll like state for the record, I'm not a lawyer, though I do play one on the internet. And I'm going to copyright that phrase possibly.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Can you sort of define what that is?
Sure. CFR is the Code of Federal Regulations. Title 28, Part 23 covers criminal intelligence systems. So Title 28 is actually covers judicial administration at the federal level. And so Part 23 is criminal intelligence systems operating policies. And so this is included in the privacy policy by reference let's see if we can take a look at that. In the definition of criminal intelligence systems, so Part 2, in the preamble to Part 2.
Okay.
So I was taking a look at this really pretty venerable regulation. I think the majority of that particular regulation was put in place in '93. Looks like there were some clarifications in '98. Originally set up by executive order sometime before that. So just looking through that particular document, I want to confirm how it corresponds to the infrastructure in place at ARIC, and just make sure that I'm understanding the application of the terminology correctly. So to begin with, there's this definition of an intelligence project at section 23.3b5 in the CFR. And so that indicates the intelligence projects, for the purpose of definition in the CFR, is the organization which operates an interjurisdictional intelligence system on behalf of a group of participating agencies. So I wanted to understand if that would be ARIC or if that would be APD, because you can see in the following piece here, in the privacy policy 4A, we say that primary responsibility for the operation of ARIC, of the ARIC Justice Information and Intelligence Sharing System, is assigned to APD. So is ARIC or APD the intelligence project, to your knowledge?
In reference to the article, is that ARIC is the entity that gets all the information, and they're the folks that have the intelligence database, which they're referring to, that is in compliance with 28 CFR.
Okay, so ARIC as an organizational entity is the project in that definition?
My only comment would be ARIC is not a legal entity. I'm thinking like a lawyer. It's a creation of the partner agencies, and each of those partner agencies is a legal entity. And by creating ARIC, they didn't create a new legal entity. So, truthfully, I've certainly looked at 28 CFR Part 23 many times, but didn't do that today, and don't remember this intelligence project definition.
Okay.
It seems to fit that, and it would imply really that the department is which is a department within the city of Austin, more likely than not fits that definition. ARIC is not a legal entity.
Okay, all right. That's helpful. And so moving on to the next definition, the criminal intelligence system basically defines all of the equipment, facilities, processes, etc. That's in 23.3b1. That just raised for me the question, are all of the, what we could say are intelligence systems, are they all classified as criminal intelligence systems according to this definition? Or is there other systems that would not fall under the governance of this policy?
The system that is operated through ARIC is a Fusion Core, which was built on the basis of the 28 CFR.
Okay, excellent. So there's no other supporting systems that would fall outside the bounds of that?
There are other systems that are utilized. I mean, just like there's the internet, there's all kind of sources, but anything that is a work product or a request for information that ARIC has to take action upon is all ran through our Fusion Core case management system.
Okay. All right, that seems to answer a lot of that. Okay, and so then just another couple of items following that on the funding for ARIC. And I wanted to confirm, my understanding is that when we initially set up the Interlocal Agreement, it was funded by federal grants administered by the Department of Justice, and that we also included in the Interlocal Agreement that once those grant funds ran out or were no longer available, that we would go through the process of setting up another interlocal agreement for funding, and that was done in 2013. And so, again, just reading through the definitions in 28 CFR Title 23, the applicability of that policy says that it's, it says the policy standards are applicable to all criminal intelligence systems operating through support under this long list of different laws and such. And so my question then is, if we're no longer accepting federal funding, is it accurate for us still to say that this is that our systems are governed by this particular policy?
In reference to, well, the thing is that we continually receive funds from the state Homeland Security, funds that are still, that we get funds through the federal government. So we do have our sustainment amendment in there to where that helps our sustainment package, but any future growth, we still receive some funds outside of our sustainment of our agencies to continue. So to answer your question is that we are still in the same mode of receiving funds. So I would say that yes, we are still in the guidelines set for it.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you for that. And that's really all the like preliminary questions that I had, and so we can move on to the first of the articles and documents that came up. And so the first one I front-loaded here was the ARIC and privacy article that appeared in the Austin Chronicle on August 29th. And just for context, the City of Austin Public Safety Commission asked me or invited me to come speak on an ARIC update, as well as Officer Jamil. Commander? Yes, okay, I'm so sorry about that. And as well as Lieutenant Chacon. And it wound up that the Public Safety Commission really was recognizing that it was not, this was not their dog in the hunt, or however we want to characterize it, but really we needed to talk about this first. And so like it all basically wound up that really didn't cover any ground in that particular meeting. But I've included links here for the documents that I shared with the Public Safety Commission, as well as the video of that event.
Greg, can you speak to the, maybe not everyone knows what the Public Safety Commission does for the city of Austin?
Sure. And I don't know if actually I may not be the best position to answer that one. Would you like to defer?
Well, I mean, I would clearly, as the role of the community advocate, I think that you can actually go to Section F, page 5 of the Public Safety Commission.
Yeah. For a county person, we don't know exactly
Is
what
that
it is.
the Public Safety Commission is one that there's representatives from each of the council members that actually bring up their specific concerns for public safety concerns. There are representatives from all the public safety entities, fire, EMS, and police, that hear specifically the challenges that are going in regards to public safety, whether it be texting while driving or whether it be making recommendations for ordinances, but all that has a public safety nexus, all the way to budgeting and staffing considerations. And then those are, that committee then makes recommendations to council.
Thank you. So they don't actually take actions other than making recommendations, though, right?
They're a purely an advisory body. They aren't a creation of state law. They're a creation of city council by ordinance, and in fact, council has created over time about 50 different advisory bodies with subject matter jurisdiction over many different things, and Public Safety Commission is one of those. And yes, they can certainly make recommendations, public recommendations by resolution or whatever methodology they choose to reflect, to convey their recommendations to council on myriad issues, including budget. Every year they get a lot of input about budget before budget is passed by council, and many different things that touch on public safety that affect one of the three major public safety agencies.
Okay, thank you.
The Public Safety Commission played an important role in the formation of the Fusion Center and the formation of this body as well, and it serves an oversight role that's defined in the policy, but we'll get to that in the later agenda item, talking about whether we want to talk to the Public Safety Commission in a formal fashion. So the article in question, the first article, is founded on an open records request that was carried out by the Austin Chronicle journalist who wrote this article, and he was, as I understand it, he was looking to see if he could find documents detailing the role of the Austin Regional Intelligence Center in the Occupy Austin phenomenon that happened in late 2011, early 2012. That's the primary flux of that particular event. And so the article is pretty wide-ranging across the different documents that emerged. And really there was one that really caught my eye, though, because I think it will enable us to walk through the policy considerations, because it looks as if, and this email in the packet that I supplied is on pages 6 and 7. It's an email string from January 4th, which was initiated by the U.S. Marshal Service. Well, speaking generally, it's initiated by particular U.S. Marshals and passed around amongst. It looks like all of the email addresses went to U.S. Marshals to begin with, and it concerned, like, I've tried to reconstruct the events here, and I'm sorry, there's a document that I did not wind up adding into the packet. This was the one that I shared with the Public Safety Commission, and it just sort of walks through a chronology of events, and that were reconstructed from just this email string. And so, there's a lot of room for error in trying to reconstruct events like that, but I tried to do the best I could as far as the research, or trying to establish surrounding context. So I'll try and walk us through that at this time. So from what I can tell, in early to mid-December of 2011, a local organizer for the organization moved to amend by the name of Michael Ryan contacted Austin-based U.S. Marshal Darren Sarton. You can see this in the kind of the second to last email is where this information is really sourced from, asking for the process of applying for a permit to protest at the local federal courthouse. And Sarton, who, it looks like he's worked, according to his LinkedIn profile, he's worked for the U.S. Marshal Service for 20 years. He asked him a couple of questions. He said, look, if you block the entrance, we're gonna ask you to leave, and told him, or directed him to a General Services Administration personnel who could actually issue a permit. That permit made its way to the supervisor for that GSA employee, and they approved the permit. So this is early to mid-December. Then this email stream we see starts up January 4th. And so there was this period of time when everything looked like it was all right. So the Marshal Service, it looks as if that the Marshal Service got in touch with GSA, and my understanding is that the U.S. Marshal Service has security jurisdiction over the federal courthouses around the country, and there's a lot of federal courthouses around the country, and so they're going to have some say in whether or not an event like this is going to be properly permitted. And so it looks like they came back to the GSA services and or GSA employees and said, you know, there's nowhere for them to actually protest on the federal courthouse property, and we need to do something differently. And so they directed them to actually be able to protest on the sidewalk. And the difference there is that the sidewalk is owned by the city. The difference there also is that you don't need a permit to protest on the sidewalk. And so if you look at the email string, it indicates that the marshals were concerned, and we're looking for, you can see I'm trying to get more information on Michael Ryan, and indicates that you might have better luck with your APD contacts though. So to make a long story short on this one, the document made its way to David Jarrell with APD, who at this time, this is January 4th, 2012, I'm not sure exactly the role David Jarrell played at that time. Can you confirm what his role would have been at that time?
At that time, he was the supervisor of our tactical intelligence unit, which that unit is now actually in the intelligence division, but at the time they worked, and they still do work on the Marshals Task Force. They're all on the U.S. Marshals Lone Star Task Force, and their primary mission is arresting fugitives. And so they're looking at violent felons that are arrested here in Austin. And they do work with the U.S. Marshals a lot. That's how you get the connection with the Marshal Service. And so Sergeant Jarrell was contacted in that capacity just because the U.S. Marshals knew him as an APD contact.
Makes sense. Okay. So, and then the second to last email near the top of the string, you see that that Officer Jarrell, I missed his designation, Sergeant Jarrell. He writes, thanks Hector, I will send this over to Sergeant James Bujima from our Fusion Center, ARIC. They are up to speed on groups like this, or they get up to speed very quick. And so, so there's a lot of questions that are opened up by that email to Sergeant Bujima. Jumping ahead a little bit, so there's a lot of questions there about how, like, what would you classify this as a tip or as a formal submission to ARIC? As we'll go into in a minute, we see that the information went into ARIC because there's a subsequent document issued the next day in relation to the Occupy Austin phenomenon, where the information was pretty much almost repeated verbatim. So the information goes in, the information comes out. You know, it's a black box to us at this point. So I'd just like to understand kind of the criteria, this process for accepting tips or submissions, if that's how we want to clarify or classify this, and just understand a little more of what happens in that interim time. Certainly not asking for the release of any police methods or anything along those lines, but just better understanding really that interface more than anything.
You just want the process of how it goes, so you want letting you know the process.
Sure, I can let you know the process, but if I can back up a minute and talk about the email between Gerald and Fujima, really the purpose for that request is that when it moved from courthouse to public sidewalk, at that point it's a request for public safety concerns. You know, what's the size of the group? Is there traffic control? This type of thing happens with the state capitol a lot. If they have a group showing up that could potentially end up, you know, on the sidewalk at 11th Street with 1,000 people, then we need to have officers in place to direct traffic and that type of thing. So that's really the connection to public safety and that reason for that request. And the second, this is really providing actionable intelligence to a federal agency that's asking for information. And as we've seen, really, especially over the past 6 months with some of the Israeli-Palestinian protests or the border protests, that a group could be in another city in a protest that ends up being violent. And we get asked about that group if they're scheduling a protest here in Austin. That's a safety concern for public safety. So in this case, it's really a request for information about is there any actionable intelligence related to public safety with this group that's going to protest, and that's how the information went back out, as well as just giving that same information back out that we confirm that they're going to be there, but there's no indication that there's any type of criminal activity that will occur.
Okay, so there were, and again, all we see here is this one email, and then the other document, the other bulletin that was issued the next day with regards to Occupy Austin. So there were likely documents or products that were produced related to the Marshal Service that we don't have visibility into. And so a couple of items there. I mean, for one, if this organizer, Michael Ryan, had from the get-go just recognized that maybe it would be a hassle to actually get a permit at the courthouse, but knew that they could part this on the sidewalk, then he wouldn't have had to have talked to anyone about that. And it probably would have been simpler for him, it looks like. So that just sort of raises a flag for me if we have city regulations which indicate that there's no reason to actually require anyone to actually contact us to organize a protest like this on a small scale, which by the first email indicates that Michael Ryan said that there would be 20 people at the protest. And by anecdotal accounts, that's at most how many there were. It was entirely peaceful and there were no problems at all from what I've heard. So, you know, it's a little troubling to me.
I guess I'd like to say is that, you know, the reason that clearly ARIC is for things that have a criminal nexus or public safety concerns. If ARIC is provided information or request, I would feel that we are negligent on the part if we don't look into things. Is that if we didn't and we received that same request and that same email stream and something did occur, then I think we would be totally looking at the other side of the table, is that something did occur, we had the information, and we chose not to look into it or provide any information. Now, I think in this regards is that we do look into the information, we vet the information appropriately, and then we provide them the information regarding to what we found. And in this case is that we did not find that there was a major concern. So for us is that you can look at the opposite side, is that anything that is sent to our center it goes into our management system, it is vetted, and then we take the appropriate action. And sometimes that's nothing based on that the information is not credible. If the information is not credible, then we are not going to put out false or bad information. And believe me, we get a lot of non-credible information. Or we would be sending things out every day, multiple times a day. And as we look at the internet, and a lot of these documents that you're looking at is that people have pulled off through the internet, and we do not look at Google and the internet as a credible source. So we have to vet that through our resources to try to provide the user with good, actionable intelligence.
Absolutely, and totally agree. It's great to hear that.
Well, I just kind of wondered, that's how, when I worked at the VA's office, I was assigned to, like if there's a protest, I went out there to it seems to me, the sooner you get information, good, bad, or indifferent, then you plan. And pre-planning stops overreactions, as opposed to not knowing, all of a sudden 20, 30 people show up downtown or something, now you've got to respond quickly without much of a plan. So I'm just thinking out loud that being noticed in every instance, and as you said, then you vet it. But if there is some credibility to it, then you all meet and you plan, and that then makes things, in my opinion, would go much smoother because you know what to expect, and you know what you're dealing with. And often, too, we would meet with, we get after who's in charge. And I would, and the lieutenants, we would meet with them. Basically, here's the ground rules. You stay within this, no problem at all. We're here to make sure that you have the opportunity to do what you do. But if we didn't know that, all of a sudden you might have 5 patrol cars with sirens and lights showing up, and before you know it, things get out of whack.
Agreed. Totally understood. So all that sounds good as far as the intake and interfacing, and I haven't had the chance to make it all the way through the CFR, but I know that there's some details in there about the requirements as far as the auditing process for the documents coming in, that sort of thing. But I want to go ahead and then transition to the output that we are aware of from the Regional Intelligence Center. And again, unfortunately, I did not include that document in the output here. It is available on the Austin Chronicle article. And that is the January 5th. So the next day, ARIC sent out an Occupy Austin update. Sent out quite a few over the first few months of that particular phenomenon. And so this just provides an update to officers on the ground. It's a pretty extensive, or looks to be a pretty extensive email list. And so in section 3G of this document, I'll just read back to us what it says here. Occupy the Courts, National Day of Protest. Move to amend.org, applied for a permit to protest at the federal courthouse. The permit was approved, but the Government Services Administration, I've been saying that wrong the whole time, then realized the only place to protest is the sidewalk, which belongs to the city of Austin. The application calls for less than 20 protesters to attend. Move to amend.org is linked to Occupy Austin. So all of that information could be gleaned from this email string, except for that last bit, which is move to amend.org is linked to Occupy Austin. And that caught my eye because, well, it's the one piece of information that looks like it was added to this document. It's the one piece of information that would explain why that information is in this particular document, which is two different things. As I understand it, the Occupy the Courts event was planned for January 20th, 2012, by this organization called Move to Amend. Move to Amend was established in 2010 and has no formal links with that Occupy phenomenon. In fact, from what I can tell, actually, one of the founders was invited to participate, and he said, whatever, good luck on that sort of thing. And, but it looks like, so it's that term linked. And I've been really, really curious about this one because it pertains to the next article as well, as far as how we're drawing these connections and the criteria for drawing those connections. So in this case, do you have any insight as to why that connection was drawn?
I'm going to let them answer, but in specific to, I'm sorry, is, if anything is added, I mean, you see documents, is that, I can tell you is that when ARIC puts a product out, it has multiple sources and we gather a lot of information. I mean, a lot of that is that, I mean, we could go into a lot of different, I think it would be great to come out to ARIC. I think most have been there. We're going to call you and get you out there real quick. But to see exactly what ARIC does on a daily basis and how information comes in and how it is vetted somewhat, and I think it would be very good. But realizing is that, again, is that our privacy policy, everything is geared towards, we put out actionable intelligence. So if the link is there and we put the information, it's because in the background of it, we have gathered information that supports that. I mean, we do not take anything on its face value when it comes into the center. It is all vetted. It could be vetted through multiple different types of sources that we have access to through APIC. So, but then again, for this specific one, I'll let Daryl see if he can answer.
With this being over 3 years ago, I don't have the specifics on that verbiage, as far as why it was in that product, but I can find out, why it was worded that way. Again, it's just providing situational awareness to the officers on the street because we had officers assigned, on an ongoing basis, down here, and providing the officers that are in the area with the information that, okay, there's going to be 20 some odd people potentially at the federal courthouse at the same time in case, a call comes out or you get information that that's going on. They'll already be aware of it happening over there.
Okay, one other question on the language there. In the email, you can see that movetoamend.org is the only reference to the organizing or the organizing body behind this particular event, and it's actually misspelled. Move to Amend is provided with 2 M's in the email document, and then in the bulletin that was sent out, it also includes 2 M's. And if you go to that link, it's a 404, like it's the wrong URL. So how did that happen? Like, is that just, did no one go to the site?
I think as the commander has said, is that if you are talking about something that's 3 years old, we would be glad to go and pull that specific document, provide some more information. But again, is that when we do our workups, we have the information, so we should be able to go back and look at the information that we provided.
Okay, well, that sounds good, and if we can have some follow-up on that, it'd be helpful. That's all of the questions and information that I had on that particular article. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions or want to go into any other pieces of this one? Any other, we're fine with this one? All right. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So this one,
Can you sort of specify what you're?
sure, this is page 8 of the handout, where this one starts. And
James Burnside?
It's
1.6.
Yeah, some
1.2.
backside,
Mystic
it's 1.2 APA.
Got it, thanks.
Okay. So this is a totally separate item, which also came up very recently. The article that I've cited as the source is from the Peaceful Streets Project website on September 10th. And I'm going to try my best to reconstruct how my understanding of how these documents came to the surface. My understanding is that there's a kind of long-running, shall we say, interaction between the Austin Police Department and this local group called the Peaceful Streets Project. And I don't want to go into any of the details about that one because this was all new to me, and it looks like it's been a long-running feud, pretty acrimonious on both sides. And so there's a court case pending about that one, which has progressed to the point where the Peaceful Streets Project, or whoever's represented in that particular case, has gotten to go ahead to go with the discovery process, and these documents have emerged from that discovery process, is my understanding. So I want to definitely leave all of the details of that particular case to the courts where that belongs. I don't want to get involved with that. But again, we have another document that has surfaced, and that's referenced in the second paragraph, again sent to Sergeant Bujima. Let's see, the date on this one is October 15th, 2012. So that email is on page 9 of the handout. You can see at the very bottom. It's from Officer Justin Berry, and he states in this email to Sergeant Bujima, attached is a brief synopsis of information I've gathered while working on an Austin Police Association sponsored project to assist in getting legislation passed for protections of officers and their families in Texas. While in the course of this project, I came across some alarming information of a national domestic extremism trend that directly reflects a similar local movement/threat. The information I found mirrors warning signs from an FBI intel. Again, this attachment is only a brief amount of information. And so then the next 2 pages are what is publicly accessible from that document. So in the following pages, I've just gone through what I've been able to gather about all of this. And this one's a bit of a doozy, because you start talking about domestic extremism, then you're talking about terrorism. You talk about sovereign citizens, you're talking about a group or a body of people that the FBI recognizes as a domestic terrorism threat. And flinging those labels around is serious business. And as we heard at the Public Safety Commission in the Citizens Communications portion of that meeting, some of the folks that were members of the groups that are listed here got up and provided really passionate testimony about how it's made them feel to see that they've been labeled accordingly in this particular document. Now, there's a lot of initial questions that we just have to get out of the way to see whether this is even germane for this forum. And so one of the questions that I think we should always ask whenever we see documents like this is, well, are they actually true documents? What is the provenance of the documents? And so on this one, I'm less clear on that piece of the puzzle. So if there's any corroboration that you all can provide on that, that would, eliminate that question.
What I'd like to try to say is that number one is that who originated these documents is that Justin Berry, who is a Austin police officer, generated these documents as well as sending an email to Sergeant Bougement. Is that he also stated very clearly at the very beginning of his email of in what capacity he was sending these emails. He wasn't saying I'm Officer Berry acting as my role as a Austin Police Department official. He says that I am with the Austin Police Association, which is an association which is not part of our Austin Police Department, but it is made up of officers who was looking into specific legislation concerns that they wanted to make to the legislator about strengthening some laws in reference to the privacy of officers. If you go deep into this, there's a, as you say, there's a long history of things in regards to Austin police officers and their contact with several groups that are in Austin. So Austin Berry is not part of ARIC. He has never been an officer at ARIC, and he is not in ARIC. He did send this information to ARIC, but then again, we can't control the information that is sent to us. But as I said, is that we take the information, we vet it, and if it's something for us to act upon, we do. In this particular case, we did not act upon the information. The document refers to, if you read it very carefully, it goes into a lot of his opinions, a lot of his conclusions. So those are his First Amendment rights, just as a lot of people put stuff on the internet that is their right to do. So I just want to try to separate the Austin Police Department did not put this information out. We clearly had it because it was sent to us. So, I mean, I hope that helps a little bit.
So page 10 and 11 they were not produced by ARIC?
Are you talking about this? It's a longer, and I think in the open record question, it was a little bit more it was like a whole PowerPoint that Officer Berry actually put together for the Austin Police Association in their efforts to try to change legislation. So, and I believe that was actually part of the open records request. So that document was not produced by the Austin Police Department, and it clearly wasn't done by the Austin Regional Intelligence Center. That was something that Officer Berry did on his own time. He didn't get paid for that. I think there was some reference that he was getting paid to do this, but this was a volunteer effort as an association member that he was passionate about as a citizen to try to change legislation.
Yeah, it does feel like we're sort of going in the wrong direction. I think we need to be looking more at the final product of the Fusion Center, and I think we're starting to get into the mechanics of their police work a little bit. And it might be a little futile for us to go too far in that direction. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's why I was saying, we definitely needed to
Yeah, like
figure
what
out.
did they do with the document as
Those
opposed
questions.
to what where it came from?
Mhm.
What they did with it would be what I think we need to look at, if anything at all.
Absolutely, and I think we've got a pretty good answer about that one. I'm happy to hear that. So, I think there's a lot of other questions about the sponsorship of the research and about whether it was passed around APD. But again, I don't think that those are questions that are germane for this particular forum. So, this leaves a lot of people hanging as far as they're not getting any sort of real resolution to their feeling that the Austin Police Department has this document in their possession, and may have not had the same sort of vetting criteria that Eric does. But that's a question for us to raise with the police department. And then the Austin Police Association's role in this and in propagating this sort of information, whether it was propagated beyond this initial production of the documents.
Hey, so, is that what our role is, though? Is the Austin Police Association?
No, not at all.
I'm
No.
not sure what you're asking.
I'm just stating for the record that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be looking at this and hoping that there were more answers provided, more guidance provided. But I think we all are in agreement that this is not the particular forum for this.
And what I will say is that, because, I mean, clearly I'm Austin Police, so I can't segregate myself to say I'm only ARIC. We are clearly aware of this, and the interested party for this particular deal has and is taking the steps to try to get resolution. And we are referring to that individual to what are the proper steps that if you need to make complaints or to get resolution and what those steps are. And that is the proper method to be able to do that. So clearly we are aware and we are asking those folks to take those steps in regards to the Austin Police Department.
All right, I think I'm fine with that one. Any other on this particular item? All right. So those were the documents in question. If we go to page 13, the next agenda item, the states discuss privacy policy concerning ERIC data collection, retention, and dissemination. And I think this is less germane from my perspective now. If we are not looking at needing to actually expunge that particular document from ERIC's data stores or from the network of partner agencies and other associated parties. I think a lot of that's covered in the CFR as far as the requirements that the infrastructure has to have, verifiable auditing processes and that sort of thing. And so while I think if the committee would like to have some explication of this from the representatives while we have them here, I'm content with the documentation in the CFR.
And just if the next audit were to bring to light something that would be of some concern with regards to record keeping, we would want to know, because that is germane, I would think, to privacy policy.
All right, and so that kind of leads us into the next one, which, so item 3 on the agenda, discuss and possibly take action on presentation to the Austin Public Safety Commission. And so, as I alluded to earlier, in the privacy policy, or actually in the Interlocal Agreement, Section 11, and auditing, it states that reciting from the agreement, it says, consistent with this agreement and the privacy policy, the ERIC operational management team shall establish both internal and external audit functions prior to ERIC becoming operational. The external audit function process will be subject to review by the City of Austin Public Safety Commission, and the Commission shall report on its review to the Austin City Council. So just a couple of questions that arise from that. Just to confirm, that external audit function was established prior to the center becoming operational.
Yes, it was, and part of that process is a peer-to-peer audit with a similar intelligence center, and our annual one last year was done with El Paso's intelligence center.
And we talked about that at the last meeting. And can you confirm if the City of Austin Public Safety Commission has at any time talked with ERIC about that external audit function or asked for presentation on that?
We have to look back. I'm sure it was reported. I know that we haven't had extensive presentations to the Public Safety Council in a while, but we try to keep them abreast through our representative that sits on the Public Safety Commission of all the actions that are happening out of ARIC.
So, one of the committee members earlier suggested that the committee as a whole may be interested in formally presenting to the Public Safety Commission. We haven't had a formal vote in a quorum context about that. But I can relay that from the Public Safety Commission meeting earlier last month, the Commission did express an interest in establishing a more formal relationship between our bodies. And my feeling was that they were feeling a little bit that they've been remiss a little bit in terms of the auditing function or in terms of living up to their responsibilities as far as their oversight role with regards to ARIC. So, of course, in that meeting I said we certainly had not come to any agreement on whether we would be interested in doing that.
So would our presentation be, as I understand our role, just reporting out on any changes to the policy itself?
Well, the Commissioner Levy in particular said he'd like to ask us to come and visit, but he was looking for, he said, a more wide-ranging discussion. I don't know what that means, but it may be.
Be to look over and present our findings on the audit results, is that?
Well, they wanted specifically to talk about the ARIC and privacy article that we spent the majority of the time going through. And so that was not covered at all in the context of that meeting. They may want an update on the findings from that. But I think as well, it may be a situation where maybe we go with a formal presentation about that piece of the puzzle, but then are available for any sort of questions or conversation that emerges from that.
Seems that the commission would benefit from a better understanding of the separation between the fusion center, because I think we've learned today even, it's sort of been illuminated a little more for me, the separation of the documents that go in versus documents that come out, and for us to look in one direction, looking back at what goes into it, that would be a beast, and I don't think anybody would expect us to do that. So they seem to be more concerned with the work product of the police department as opposed to the fusion center. What's going in as opposed to what's coming out, because I don't think we've seen a lot in these articles about what's actually coming out of the fusion center that would be of some concern. I mean, obviously, Sergeant Berry's report would be a concern if that were the work product of the fusion center, which would make it a concern of ours. But I'm not quite sure what we would be presenting on to the commission that was in reference to that article in that particular document.
And I'm not sure I would want to report to anyone on a newspaper article. Certainly a newspaper article that we don't even know what's factual or not.
That we don't know if it's factual or not.
I don't know that this article is factual at all.
Well, the documents.
Well, after our discussion today, I mean, you can look at one page of something when there's 500 pages that go with it and come to one conclusion, and you read the whole thing and you come to a totally different conclusion. And the press is very famous for just putting part of what they need to put in there and not the whole story. I mean, I don't want to report to anybody on an article that I don't know a thing about. That'd be me personally.
I guess, go ahead.
I'm thinking, though, that the public might want to know how you're vetting and all that. In other words, you know, I wish we had the whole town in here to hear what you said, because once they understand, it's not garbage in, garbage out. If it's garbage going in, it ain't going out. No, you know,
And
I mean,
there is
there's
garbage
a.
going in necessarily.
Well, I'm sorry.
And there is.
Of course, that's why they vet. They, look, I don't think anybody would want to cut your group out of any information. You'll take any information you get and decide whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but we don't want to stem the flow of that. But again, I don't think the public probably really understands just generally how y'all operate and the safeguards that are put in place now. Getting into discussions about what specific information goes out the other end, no, but just the safeguards. I mean, what you wrote and everything else, I think if the people understood this, that they're still gonna probably get an email or two, like we've seen here, but they dealt with it. You know, you dealt with it, and it didn't go forward. The business about the APA guy, you saw that, you dealt with it, you vetted it, it didn't go out the other end as any actionable thing at all, so.
That we know of.
Well, I'm taking it to work, but my point is that I think it might help that the public just understand the general mechanics of how ARIC operates, because if they're getting their information from stuff like this, they don't know. That's my
Yeah,
two
and
cents.
it's unfortunate that documents like that, and even some of these emails, end up being an indictment on the Fusion Center at all.
Yeah, which had nothing,
I know.
They were created by it.
Yeah, the Fusion Center has far more backstops in it than just
Yeah.
about anything else.
And I can respond to one point you brought up, is the challenge for us is we get a lot of information that's not actionable, that contains personal information that, to just open the doors and give people unfettered access, then you're compromising all the people whose information may have come to us that was nothing, that was vetted, that didn't go anywhere.
You're also
And so
compromising.
that's the purpose of the statutes and the privacy policy that don't allow that.
I think it also compromises those who provide information to you that don't want the whole world to know that they're giving you that information as well.
Yes, sir.
So would it be responsive, I hate to put work on you folks, but would it be more appropriate, to be responsive to the Public Safety Commission who's raised those concerns, maybe if the APD somehow, or you guys explained what they're talking about?
Correct. What I was going to make a recommendation is that, because we do have a representative on the Public Safety Council that meets with the chairperson before the agendas are set, and this, I think at the last meeting it was discussed that ARIC would be a future topic on the agenda, that we get some clarity from the chairperson on specifically what group are we talking about, ARIC as a whole in reference to our operations, which may be that we may need to come in and provide a presentation, or in reference to this entity about the changes in the privacy policy or recommendations or auditing the things that y'all have been involved with or are concerned.
All sounds pretty good to me.
I do have a quick question.
Sir, I'm so sorry.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to the article, they mentioned mission creep. Was there anything that you all saw, because I'm sure y'all read this, in the Chronicle, Austin Chronicle, this article, was there anything that you saw in any of this press coverage that would lead you to a possible conclusion that the privacy policy could be tightened up anywhere, that there is room for improvement, or potentially increase the backstops that are placed in the privacy policy, or decrease them? I don't know, but when they use the term mission creep, I don't know if that insinuation is that they're falling outside the privacy policy or not.
I didn't, nothing raised to the level of concern in reference to the word mission creep. I think that we have a clear privacy policy. In reference to your question, is that can the privacy policy be tightened in any way? One is that I say policies are only written for the day when they're originated, and that because things change, we always have to look for best practices. So, do I know specific areas? I mean, I think to be very transparent and open, we've looked at emails, and since emails are so complicated, and all government entities, not ARIC, all government entities have a challenge and a complexity of dealing with the retention that we have to follow, which is sometimes very vague regarding emails. So clearly, we have a records retention expert on our staff that works with our city clerk's office, that meets the state retention schedules. So clearly, we are always looking for further guidance and direction on some of those vague interpretations sometimes, especially when the terminology is, when they, I think it's, when it's termed as AV, which is administrative value. Well, what does that specifically mean? And it could mean different things to the person that is viewing that document. So in reference to, could there always be things that are tightened? Absolutely. I think being educated and training and things that we could improve upon, absolutely.
How can we help you avoid the perception of mission creep, of these sort of articles coming out? How could, I mean, as far as the words of the policy?
You know,
I don't know.
I would say is that as someone that was on the team a long time ago and helped create a lot of these documents, and
I like the words, and I like words. I like being able to help you guys, and I think that's part of our job is to look at the language and see how we can help you.
Absolutely. But I can't say as being open for several years, although we're probably still a baby fusion center than some. But to have, we did so much public outreach, I think in reference to your deal about explaining what ARIC was going to do and is doing, was a lot of public outreach, as well as is that these documents were actually helped produced by like TAG and other organizations that actually viewed these before they were ever signed and actually had input in those. So we had a lot of input into these documents. Now, I can also say is that if we have one or two articles that come out over a 4-year period, no, I'm not very concerned, but they always make us look and say, are we doing the best that we can do? But we have not had an outpouring of a lot of information that ARIC is having mission creep, or there's things that are ringing the bells that we are doing something inappropriate, illegal, or anything in that realm, because we probably have more safeguards and things set up in place than a lot of entities do that are out there.
I don't know if that makes me feel entirely better, but I do want to thank y'all for coming today and for answering a lot of questions that were there. I think that we have a lot more answers and a lot more clarity about a lot of things, and so I think there'll still be some questions for the department and for the police association, but thank y'all very much.
Did we decide how we're going to present to the presentation?
Well,
Do you want to?
didn't sound
No,
like
I
there was
mean, I'm
questions.
not.
and,
I mean, first place is.
Well, you made a good
Yeah.
point that you are Austin's representative in the emails. Because, I was concerned, you saw my concerns with regards to just having one person speaking and not representing the group as a whole.
And I think I was very clear with the Public Safety Commission about that I did not represent the views of the committee itself.
Well, and I think it just brought to light the bigger problem, which was we haven't ever presented or presented a formal opinion. We haven't showed our faces to Public Safety Commission, so thanks a lot for that. But we really should maybe.
Well, I think you're correct.
Take a
You're the
vote.
ones that should, not us. I mean, we just write the privacy policy, but the mechanics of how it works on day to day, they would be the representatives, and that
Yeah.
seems to be the issue that's out there right now.
But I think addressing those issues, or these issues, is something that y'all can do, but maybe there might be an opportunity for us to just, like you say, show our face and talk about what our role is.
And to say that we vetted a lot of, or
Yeah.
we looked through a lot of issues, or you presented a lot of them, and got hopefully, I think, pretty satisfying answers.
So if I can make the recommendation is that we'll talk with the chair and bring both of those action items to him as reference to what do you want to hear from ARIC, and in reference can, I would say, when can your group get on their agenda to lay out y'all's role and to provide your input?
How often do they meet?
Every month.
Oh, wow.
First Monday,
Yeah.
4 o'clock.
But their agendas are very
Fill up
full.
with,
Are they?
Yes.
So can you get back to us about whatever this person you're going to talk to?
Absolutely. I think we would be looking at November, but I believe that we can have them reach out sooner is always better. And that way, potentially, it could get on the November agenda.
Okay. Is everybody good with that? Yeah. Okay, any other business? Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second. All in favor? Thank y'all.
Thank y'all. It's good seeing you.
Nice meeting you for the first time.
Good seeing you.
Thank you, sir.